Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to learn about conditional tests and if statements. When we reference an if statement, we must first describe if a given condition or test of the statement is true or false. If something, then do something else. For example, if a file exists, then open it. Or if two values are equal, then do this action. There are countless conditional tests that you can use with if statements, and we're only going to briefly introduce them in this video. First, we can view some information about tests by just looking at the man pages for test. And so the first thing that you want to note here is it looks like we have test and then an expression. And our expression occurs inside of square brackets, and it looks like we have space around the square brackets. And if we scroll down, we get some information about the different types of tests that we can have. We have tests for strings. We can see right here whether two strings are equal, we use the equal sign. If two strings are not equal, we have exclamation equal sign. We have tests for integers. To test if two integers are equal, we use TAC EQ. And then we have the standard comparison operators, greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, not equal to. And we also have tests for files. So for instance, like TAC D will test if a file exists and it is a directory. TAC E will test that just the file exists, while TAC F here tests that a file exists and is a regular file. So lots of different tests that you can perform. We're only going to look at a few of them here. So let's open up a terminal and let's try to type out one of these if statements right here in our terminal. And so we'll start by defining a variable. Say num is equal to 10. And so now I'm going to say if, and now I need my test condition. So my test is square brackets, space, and then an expression. So I'm going to say we'll use parameter expansion, and we'll say $num. And I should get in the habit of putting this inside double quotes, I think. That will avoid any unwanted special characters. And then we're going to do TAC EQ 10. So we're going to check whether or not this integer value is equal to 10. I then put a semicolon, and I say then, and I'll hit enter, and now I can write some code. What do I want to do if this conditional test is true? Well, let's just echo the string hi. And once I'm done here, I now have to type phi, like it's if backwards. And if you look here, it printed hi. So a few things to note, right? We have our conditional test. It goes inside square brackets. We have to have spaces here around the test. Lastly, if we start the if statement with if, we end with phi, and it almost sort of creates like a block of code. And so this block of code idea will become more apparent when we actually write our scripts in our text editor. We're going to see that maybe we indent it so it's a little bit more readable and it actually looks like a block. If I look at my command history by just hitting the up arrow to rerun this, it looks like I have everything set here, and it's inserted some semicolons for me, and this is another appropriate way that you could run this call. Right now I'm using TAC EQ to do integer comparisons. If I wanted to do string comparisons, I would just use a single equal sign, as we saw in our help documentation. Let's change the value of num and run the script again. So I'll say instead of num equals 10, let's say num is equal to 9. And so now if I run this script, nothing happens because the conditional statement here, this test, is not true, right? Num does not equal 10, it now equals 9. So nothing happened. But sometimes we might want something to happen if the test is not true, and we can accomplish that by using an else statement when we want to do something if the given condition is not true. So let's rewrite this little block of code here. So I'll say if, and square brackets for my test, num, and I'll put that in quotes, TAC EQ 10. Then we'll say echo hi. Now I'll type the word else, and I'll say echo bye. So otherwise I want to say bye, and then I'll say phi. And if we look here, we now get the behavior of this happening when num is not equal to 10. So if I set num equal to 10 and I run this, we get hi. If I set num equal to something other than 10, 44, and I run this, we get by. So now we're using that else block. We can also run the conditional test in regards to files. So like for example, instead of just doing integer comparison, maybe I want to check to see if a file name exists. So I am in here, I'll do, we'll create a variable, say file name is equal to test. All right, and now I'm going to check if tac E for does this file exist, and we have to then give the file. So I'll say we'll use parameter expansion, so $ file name. Then I want to echo file already exists. Else, let's create the file. So I'll just touch, and I'll use parameter expansion again, file name. And we'll end this if block with phi. And so if I look here, it looks like this ran, and we created a file called test. And so if I run this again, it tells me that the file already exists because it's already in there. If I change file name to something else, let's say file1, and I run this, file1 does not exist, so it should create the file. And if I just ls, it now looks like we have that file too. I like this. I like this a lot. And so let's make a script that kind of focuses around creating files for us and then maybe setting the permissions for us. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'm going to remove file1. I'm going to remove test. Perfect. And let's cd into our scripts folder. And we're going to start by making a file called mkfile. So I'll say nano mkfile. And we'll start with our shebang. Bin bash, and I'll put a comment here. Touch a file if not already in existence and set its permissions. Okay, so first let's prompt the user for a file name. So I'm going to say echo, and I'm going to use the tac-n option to keep the prompt on the same line. Enter a file name. And now I want to read that file name. So we're going to say read, and I'll use a variable file name. Wonderful. Now, this is going to work nicely, but we saw, I think in our last video with our script numbers, right? We want to create files, but we want to create them in the specific directory that we are currently in. And when I move this script into another location, if I just try to create file name, like we did, just a few seconds ago, it's going to create it in whatever directory the script is being called. So I'm going to create a new variable here. I'll call it file path, and I'm going to set this equal to, and we'll use double quotes here. I'll say the current working directory of the user. And then I'll give the file name. And so this will, regardless of where we put this script, the file path where we're going to put our file is going to be in the current working directory of the user and then the name of the file. Wonderful. So that's going to help out nicely. Now, let's check to see if our file actually exists. So we'll say if, all right, and so we'll do our conditional test, tac E, and we'll say file path. If that exists, if there's a file in that file path, then, and now here I'm going to tab in, so it kind of looks like I have a block of code. I'm going to just echo file already exists, ... exiting. And now I want my else command, so I'm going to say else, let's do something else. And so now I'm going to tab over again. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to create the file. And so I'm going to say touch, we'll touch, and I'm going to touch what's stored in my variable file path. So I'll do parameter expansion on file path, and I'm going to put it inside double quotes so that no tricky kind of special characters get in my way at all. And then we'll echo file created, period. Now, this should work. In fact, let's test this. Let's change our permissions. So right now we don't have execute permissions. So let's do chmod plus x. We want to we can give everybody permissions on this. mk file. All right. And so if I run this right now, enter file name, file1, syntax error, unexpected line of file. Oh, what did I do? Oh, I started my if block. I need a fee here to end the if block. So let's just put this in here to test it. We'll say file1, file created. So let's look, and there it is. So now what we want to do is before the file is created, we want to allow the users to set the permissions right away, because by default on my machine, it's getting set to read, write, read, and read. We want to let the user decide what permissions are going to be set there. So I'm going to remove file1, and let's go back to our script. And I want this to happen inside of my else block. So I'm going to have an echo, and we'll suppress the new line, so tac n, enter a permission code for the file, and then I'll give them a little hint here. I'll use **** and space. And I can use the asterisks here because we're using double quotes, and so this is not going to get expanded, which is going to be really nice. And so now the user is going to enter in some information, so we should read it. So we're going to read that information. We'll put it in a variable called permission. Now we want a sequence of if statements. Let's look at some of the special cases, right? So if, and we'll say permission, so we'll use parameter expansion here, is equal to 777. Let's do that. If it's equal to 777, then that's a special case, right? So we're going to tab in. We'll just echo all users have read, write, execute permission. Okay. Now, we're going to introduce something kind of nice here. If I want to check multiple tests, right? We did if and else. That's really only two. If I want to check multiple ones, I can use elif, and that's like another branch of the if statement. So I'll say, if this, okay, do it. Otherwise, or else if, test this next. So now we'll test the permission, and we'll set it equal to 666. And then we'll say, let's echo all users have read-write permissions. We'll put another elif, and we'll say, we'll test permission. So again, we're doing parameter expansion here. Permission, not permissions. We're doing parameter expansion, and we're putting inside double quotes so that we don't get any errors from odd special characters. And we're going to check 444. Then we'll say, echo, all users have read permissions. And then let's put an else block, right? Let's put an else block to catch all other conditions. We'll just say, echo, permissions have been set to, and let's put the actual permission value. So we'll do $permission to do the parameter expansion on that. And we have to end this if block, right? We've got this if block nested inside of this other if block. So I'll do fee, and then we've already closed the outer if block. All right, I think this is going to work really nice. Let's go test this. So I'll hit exit and save it. So if I run this, enter a file name, file1, file created, enter a permission code. We'll do 777. And so all users have read, write, execute permissions. And they do not. They have read, write, read, and read. Why is that? Let's go to our file. Oops. because I never set the permissions. I forgot to do that. I read the permissions, but then I forgot a very important line here, and you're probably sitting there laughing because you realized it, right? We've read the permissions, we're saying we've set them, but we never actually set them. And so right here before these if statements, I should set the permissions. So I'm going to call chmod, and then we'll look at the permission, and I then have to give the file, right? So I'll do parameter expansion on the variable file path. Now we should be working nicely. So let me exit this and test this again. Let me remove file 1, and we'll call make file. And so we'll say file 1, and our code will be 777. All right, it tells me it's there. It tells me they all have read-write permissions and execute permissions, and they do. Perfect. Let's test this for the other cases. We'll say file 2, 666, and file 3, 444, and then let's run it one more time to test our else block. Am I on file 4? Yeah, file 4, 514. Okay. If we check, read, write, execute, read, write, read, and then that looks like that's good as well. Perfect. So this script seems to be working really nicely. Why don't we move it into our other directory where we're housing all of our scripts? So we're going to do move, sudo move mkfile to root user local bin. Oh, I typed ms instead of mv. All right, so that's gone. Why don't I clean up this directory? So I'll remove file, and we'll use the wildcard here to get rid of all of them. Yes. All right. Let's just test to make sure that if I move out of this directory, regardless of what directory I'm in, the file should be created here. So I'm going to call mkfile now. We'll say file 1, and the permission code, I'll make it 666. All right. If we look here, I do ls-tech-l, I have file 1 with read-write privileges. So that's working really good. Let's remove file 1. And I think we're pretty good here, right? They cleaned up the scripts folder. All right. Let's head over to our scripts, our root user local bin. And let's look at the, what was the script called again? Make file, mkfile. Let's look at this one last time. So I'm going to do nano mkfile. If you noticed here, for our conditional tests, we use single square brackets. You can also run tests using double square brackets. There's a lot of similarities between these two things with a few differences. They have their advantages and their drawbacks. I'm not going to get into them here. Just know that the two brackets is like a newer format, which will only work in certain shells, while the single set of brackets is an older format that is going to use, it's going to work in all types of shells. So regardless of what type of Linux you're working on, this should work. So just know that that's out there. You may come across seeing a different notation, and that's perfectly fine. Experiment with it and see if you can find the differences. All right, I think this is a wonderful place to stop, and I will see you in the next video.